Hi, everyone. It's Reverend Patricia here, and we're in our series on Lessons in Truth at Unity of Richmond East Bay. This is my favorite chapter in Lessons in Truth. I think when I first read this book, which I noted in my book, I bought the book in 1992 on my birthday in 1992, and I read the chapter on faith, and I think it's just resonated in such a deep way inside me that this particular chapter and Emilie Cady's book has always been, in a sense, the heart of my connection with unity. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, yes, yes, but Emilie Cady just really anchored it in for me, and specifically on this chapter on faith. So I'd like to share a little bit about it with you, and hopefully in this time that we're dealing with the COVID pandemic, and right now it's a time when people are beginning to open up and make some shifts and changes in their life. So I think that this is a powerful understanding for us to really anchor into consciousness. So the thing that I really get from this chapter on faith is, we can think about, sometimes we say, oh, I don't have any faith, but that's not really true. We all have faith. We have faith. It's just how we're using this capacity that we have of faith to manifest our lives, to draw into our world from what Charles Fillmore would call the ethers or spiritual substance, things that are not seen, into the world of what is seen. And, in this time, it's a great time to really kind of exercise your faith. People say test your faith, but I would say more to exercise your faith and to really explore where your faith lives inside you, how strong it is. I think that it is, when we think about faith, you could think about it kind of like a noun. Well, you have faith or you don't, I have a sweater or don't have a sweater. I have glasses or I don't have. It's not a thing. It's faith is, it's like a process in a sense. And when Emilie Cady talks about it, it really, for me, makes a lot more sense as I understand the dynamics of what it means to be a faithful person, somebody who lives by a strong faith. We know people like that. I had a friend who was part of my Unity Church in Berkeley, and she, bless her beautiful soul, she's passed on. She was one of our prayer chaplains. She was on our board of directors. And I always said to her, you are our faith anchor in the community. She just had a strong faith in absolutely everything that we were doing in the church, way before we could ever see how things were going to unfold. Dee was there, and she would hold this just kind of fierce, almost like mother fierceness about her trust in the presence of God and the ability to anchor in and unfold miraculous things in our world. So just to look at a few definitions. So in the Bible, the definition that we hear about faith is that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So that's kind of an interesting thing to unpack a little bit more. And Charles Fillmore talked about faith in that way as well, in a little different way. He said, faith is the perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape substance. So in both cases, this definition that Emilie Cady gives and Charles Fillmore gives and Hebrew gives all have this one thing called substance in there. Emilie Cady talks about faith, and she talks about three different aspects of the nature, basically the nature of God, which is that God is creative cause, God is substance, and God is the supply of our every need. And it links in exactly with what both the definitions in Hebrew, talking about faith being the substance of things that are hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, and also Charles Fillmore saying faith is a perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape substance. So it's important for us to kind of understand what are we talking about here? Substance, what is substance? We think substance ought to be like my phone here, right? Like substance ought to be something that exists in form or exists in a way that we can feel, touch, see, smell, with our senses. But what we're dealing with here is a different kind of substance. We're dealing with spiritual substance. We're dealing with that which is not seen. We're dealing with basically all there is of God, all there is of the divine, this creative energy. It's an energy field that we're talking about here. We're talking about substance. We're talking about a vibrational field. I mean, in physics, we would be talking about the quantum field. And Charles Fillmore would probably be talking about that if he wanted to kind of bridge science and his spiritual understanding of faith is the perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape what's in the quantum field, to shape what we do not see right now, but what the mind has the capacity to discern and to grab out of into form out of that which is not visible at this point, that which we can't connect with our five senses, because we are so much more than our senses. We live in a basically three-dimensional, almost four-dimensional world, but there's so many more dimensions to not only who we are, but to what God is and what exists in the world beyond our small self. So Emilie Cady talks about this idea that, well, we can have blind faith. She says that's good enough for ministers and for children and for women. I'm not so sure I kind of like that categorizing. But anyway, she said there's blind faith, and, people kind of discount that. Oh, if you're really smart, you don't really, why would people have faith? Intellectual people wouldn't believe like those ministers, children, and women would believe. But then she talks about there's an understanding faith. And that's the piece that I think we're being called into right now to really grasp what does she mean by an understanding faith. And I want to just say this. This is a book we are reading, we are using our mind to understand something that is way beyond the mind. And so my desire for you and my desire for myself, really, as I grow in my spiritual journey, is that as I read things and they begin to have meaning for me, they begin to kind of get absorbed in my being, that I'm having the experience of it, not just having an understanding of a concept. So this idea that she talks about, and the thing that grabbed me the most in the book, is she says that we have to understand that faith is not just something that is intuitively known. In other words, we don't just kind of, oh, I really know that God is going to bless me and God is going to give me perfect health. She says it's beyond that level of intuition. That would be what you would call kind of blind faith, because she says it's based on law, it's based on principle, it's based on something that exists like geometry, like the sum of the triangles, right? It's always going to equal the same thing. And she said, this is the way faith works for us in the world. If we're really ready to understand what faith is all about, it works for us like law. And she uses a few biblical passages to really kind of anchor this in. She talks about the idea that Jesus talks about ask, seek, knock. Okay, that's one of the really simple ones. All things whatsoever that you pray for, believe that you receive them and you shall have them. All the things that you pray for, believe that you receive them and you shall have them. So there are a couple things in there to unpack, and that's where Emilie Cady's this information on the chapter on faith is so powerful. We don't have a desire for something in our life, or even have a pull towards something in our life to ask for it, unless it were already on its way to us. That's what she says. That we can't even really understand what something is unless it's already coming to us. She says, whenever we have a desire in our heart, think about this, that you're asking for something, the ask is coming from some sort of desire you have in your heart. Maybe it's a dissatisfaction and you want something better. Maybe something's going wrong in a relationship and you're going, oh, I'd really like a little bit more love in my life, or I'd really like my garden to be more beautiful, or I'd like my health. I'd like to be able to go dancing. And I've got a problem with my hip. I don't, but that's, so we don't even have this kind of ask for something where we're going to pray for something unless there's this desire that comes from our heart. And she says, desire in your heart, when you feel that desire in your heart, is God tapping on your consciousness with his infinite supply. The infinite supply of God is tapping here and going, oh, there's way more health in your body. There's health in your body. Get aware, become aware of the health in the body. This desire is from the Father. Desire means from the Father, from the divine, the Mother, Father, God. So we don't have a desire for something else unless it's already on its way to us out of the mind and heart of God. And we wouldn't feel it if it weren't already on its way to us. It's like that traveling out of God toward us is the tapping that's happening. She says the law, however, is that we have to ask for it. We can't just go and go, oh, I'm really feeling like maybe it would be really nice if I could do that. It'd be really nice if I could go dancing again, or it'd be really nice if I would be able to have a better relationship in my life. We have to actually ask for it. We have to make the demand for it. And what she says is the supply is always there, but the supply is waiting for our demand. And this is where the power of faith comes in, because it's the power of faith. It's in that awareness that when we feel a desire for something, that we are called to make the demand, because that fulfills the law. Ask, seek, knock is what we're being told. If we don't make the demand for it, the supply is just going to be there, but it will never be fulfilled in our life. We'll never have the fruition of that particular desire if we don't make the demand for it. So this is such an important part of our realization, because it plays on a couple of different levels. One of the things that she said that I was so interested, I thought this was really kind of interesting, because part of what we're dealing with is faith is the perceiving power of the mind. So if your mind is going, oh, well, I don't know if I can really have that, because the mind wants to strategize all the ways that you need to put things in place. You want to strategize of how it's going to happen, my way or the highway, rather than saying, God wants me to have this. If the divine wants me to have this perfect health, if the divine wants me to be in a really healthy, joyful relationship, I need to trust that the divine's going to give me the guidance to be able to say the right thing, to do the right thing, rather than thinking that I need to know the way. And one of the things she says that I think is really interesting, pretty close in the early part of the book, she talks about how we don't measure up to what we think is God's standard. She says, from the moment we begin to ask, we began to question our ability to reach God's standard of faith on which hung our fate. We also began to question whether, after all, there is any such power in faith to prevail with the giver of every good gift, so as to draw out of him something that he's never let us have before. So often that happens for us. We think, oh, well, God, this hasn't worked in the past. I'm not really sure. Why should I even ask now? And that is that sort of human nature that lets us not connect in to the higher vibrations, to the energy channels of what the divine is pulling and inviting us to say yes to moment to moment. So faith is about this connecting the belief system that we have about what's possible. There's huge, limitless possibilities for us. And for us to say, if I can even imagine it, if I can feel how it's moving in and through me in my life, it's not just me that's imagining it. It's coming to me through the spiritual substance of the universe. and all that's necessary in order to put the pieces in place for me to have the fullness of that experience, whether it's a thing or whether it's a quality of being in your world, in your work that you do, in your relationship, whether it's how the church is going to regroup again after this time of pandemic is over. We have the capacity within us to open ourselves to the infinite possibilities of the divine. And as we do this, and as we make the basically demand, as we ask, seek, knock from a place of conscious connection with the divine, and from a place of trusting and knowing that we are part of this spiritual principle and spiritual law, that it doesn't come to us if it's not there for us. So one of the other things that's so important for us as we kind of begin to stretch our faith muscle a little bit, move beyond those places where we've doubted God because we've doubted ourselves. I think mostly that's what goes on. We go, I'm not worthy. I don't have what it takes. We're in that place of feeling less than ourselves. And when we do that, we're in a sense doubting God. We're doubting that powerful, causative, universal presence that's available for us to co-create with us in the world. So one of the things that's really important is for us to be in a place of gratitude and praise. Gratitude, first of all, for whatever it is coming into us. So, whatever divine idea is coming to you. I think right now I'm talking to a lot of people in my coaching practice who are feeling like a new purpose is coming out for them. I have friends, I have a really dear friend who is dealing with his business. I mean, his business, he said, I'm probably going to go bankrupt because I can't run my business because of what's happened. And that means a couple of things. It could mean that you could go into the tank, you could go into a place of desperation and despair because there could be much financial upheaval. But it also, like the Chinese, it's opportunity. Crisis is opportunity. It's an opportunity to be in this time in the indwelling presence of the divine and to unearth new ideas and new possibilities. And I'm finding that a lot of people I know are feeling that that something's coming, but they don't quite know what it is. So it's a very transitional time for many of us because we don't have the full picture of what it is even that we want. And so important for us in this time is to get into the state of being that we want. We want a state of connection with family, with friends, with our spiritual community. We want a sense of joy. We want a sense of being giving and making a contribution. We want a sense of feeling important and significant in our world, to give and receive love. So important for all of us. So if we don't know what the actual picture is, at least we can move into a state of consciousness, higher consciousness, the Christ consciousness. And from that place, the perceiving power of the mind linked with the power of substance is going to manifest whatever it is, that picture that is being co-created through you in the world right now. Super powerful time, a really powerful time. So remember Emile Cady's desire in the heart is always God. Desire is God tapping on your soul with God's infinite supply. And the supply won't come unless we make the demand. So hold it in your prayers, speak it, speak the truth in your affirmations. I'm a powerful co-creator with the divine presence. This spiritual community co-creates itself in a magnificent, powerful way to give and receive love, creativity, and bless people with the message of unity. We live in Christ consciousness, folks. Let's stay there, whether we're in our own homes or when we go out, when we connect with others. Let's be that light, that faith beacon that is the Christ consciousness. So many blessings to you. I look forward to having a meditation with you today. Namaste.